Hey everybody, welcome to our second remote learning panel. Today we have Dana and Gabby who are going to be talking a little bit about virtual backgrounds and some green screening magic, and I think we are going to be getting some demonstrations. So since we have become such a big organization, if you wouldn't mind just quickly introducing yourself and describing a little bit about your classroom in terms of the age of your students that you are working with. Dana, why don't you kick it off?
I'm Dana Peterson. I'm a classroom teacher for the CCC program, and I teach upper elementary students, so 5th through 6th grade, sometimes middle school, 7th grade.
Hi, I'm Gabby Frederick. I teach middle school in the BSD program, so I have 6th and 7th graders.
All right, thank you both. So I'm not sure if you guys realize, but Dana is not actually on Privet Drive right now, or I should say Harry Potter, not actually on Privet Drive. So Dana, why don't you tell us what is virtual background on Zoom, and how do you, well, we're not necessarily going to go into the how-tos because I'm going to send along some links to do that, but can you just kind of give us a brief, like, what is a virtual background?
So a virtual background is a really easy way to kind of change up where you're teaching. As Sarah said, she can do the how-tos, but what I do when I choose virtual backgrounds is I just find an image on Google that I want to use, and I save it to my desktop, and then I can change out my virtual backgrounds as I'm doing a lesson. So one activity that I do weekly is a read aloud, and we're doing Harry Potter. And so what I can do to make it more engaging is, as we're reading along, we can start on Privet Drive at nighttime. As we learn more about Harry and where he grows up, I can move to the cupboard under the stairs. So it's just a really great way for our more visual learners to engage them a little bit. Text or what we are reading aloud.
Jenna, were you able to catch that? My audio got a little buzzy for a second there. You caught it. Okay. Thank you. I might be having some connection issues, but that's so cool. I love it. How about you, Gabby? It looks like you might be having a little different setup behind you with the green screening. What's the green screening and how have you used it in your lessons?
So for my students, the biggest thing has been keeping them engaged. And we've tried different backgrounds, but they don't seem to be as interested in that. So one of the things that the curriculum coordinator sent along was to do a magnifying glass. So it's just cardboard with green paper. And then I can, navigate through the screen. Who's that? What are they doing? Ask my WH questions. But I've also been able to do it with other activities. So I have a student who's working on bill identification. So I'll take my magnifying glass and go over and show them different parts of the bill and ask, how much is this worth or whatever. So it's been neat to be able to take different activities that I traditionally do with a PowerPoint and sort of make them more interactive and keep them engaged with that.
So behind you right now, do you have an actual green screen?
Nope, I just have my white wall. As long as it's solid, it seems to work pretty well for me.
Great. How about you, Dana? Do you have an actual green screen behind you?
I do. I have a homemade green screen, just green 8.5 by 11 paper taped to my wall.
So I know that, on campus we have the media lab that has been moved in different locations over the years, but we have the fancy lights and the fancy screen and all this stuff. And I think that sometimes people see, oh, green screen, I can't do that from home. But as you can see, Dana and Gabby have found ways, you don't even necessarily need the screen, and Dana just has paper taped to her wall. So that's very clever, and it seems to work pretty well. That when I'm looking at you with the the Harry Potter background, it looks like very clear. It's not, it looks like it works really well.
Good.
Very cool. Do you have a favorite lesson that you've taught using these technologies?
So one thing that we've been able to do, similarly to Gabby's class, a lot of our priority has been engaging our students. And something we've been able to do during lessons is go on kind of scavenger hunts, or we're looking for someone. We've been learning about the ocean. And so we can travel through the ocean by using different virtual backgrounds. We can stumble upon a shark and we can talk about our feelings. Does this make us feel scared? Are we nervous? What should we do? Should we swim away? Should we run away? And then we can change the background, and we've changed location with our student.
Very cool. It's almost like a choose your own adventure through the ocean. That's very neat. Very cool. Do you have any favorite lessons or activities that you kind of talked about using the magnifying glass. Was there anything else you wanted to add on that, Gabby?
Yeah, one of the other things that it might have been Jocelyn or curriculum passed along was changing your cursor. I found that to be really useful for things like working with one of my students on reading and starting and going left to right. And it's kind of hard to see the white cursor on a white page. So I did an ice cream cone, which she really likes and sort of draws her in again, and I'm able to guide her through. Or for my other students, they're really into Toy Story, so I can make the cursor Buzz Lightyear, and that sort of keeps them more engaged for those non-preferred activities, which has been super helpful as well.
Is that something, the change in the cursor, that you do right within Zoom, or is that a different feature?
I believe it's a Chrome extension, so you have to be using Chrome, and you can turn it on and off, so you don't have to have Buzz Lightyear all the time, but it's nice to be able to sort of switch through and play to your child's interests, which is cool.
We have an upcoming panel scheduled for the end of the week with a few faculty who are doing cool things with the Google tools. So maybe we'll make sure that we include a link for some of the Chrome extensions and other things you can do through Google to, make these lessons more engaging for students. So that's a good teaser for Friday's panel. Let's see. Yesterday's panel, what Adrienne was talking about, how potentially unexpectedly, she seemed to kind of have better joint attention with some of her students through Zoom than she sometimes felt like she had during face-to-face lessons. And I was wondering if either of you had any unexpected things pop up during this remote learning time that, was something a little bit different or unexpected compared to when you're teaching in the classroom.
One thing that we've been able to do via Zoom and screen sharing is model device use a little bit more, which is pretty cool. We can screen share screenshots of device pages and kind of highlight the area we're trying to get students with, which has been great. And another thing with virtual backgrounds that you can do is put up a screenshot from your device page behind you. And this is great, especially for students who maybe have difficulty focusing when there's a lot of visual stimuli, because if you're screen sharing and then you have yourself and you have other students, it can get really busy. And so putting it as a virtual background just minimizes that, and you can kind of point with your own fingers, which is cool.
Very cool. Very cool. That's so neat. How about you, Gabby?
I agree. I think the device sharing has been really helpful for my students as well, especially when prompting sort of new things. On answering WH questions, which is something new that we hadn't really focused on prior to remote learning. So it's hard to be able to prompt them through the screen, especially if there's not a parent or a sibling around. So being able to pull it up and point and navigate them through that, I found to be really helpful as well.
I'm wondering how many of these sort of little tips and tricks that we've learned throughout this period of time are things that we'll be able to carry over, even when we're all back together again, whenever that might be. Hopefully some of these things can aid us as we're thinking about planning for the future. Is there anything you would say to a colleague who sees this and is like, that's so cool and I really want to try, but I don't have green paper and it looks really complicated? What would you tell one of your colleagues about your experiences using these technologies?
I would say it's easier than you think. I was also very intimidated when we first got the information about green screening, and technology is just not my forte, but there's some great tutorials out there. There's really, really simple things that can help your kiddos get more engaged, like wrapping a stick in paper, and then you have a magic floating feather, something really, really easy that takes about 15 seconds to do can bring the engagement level of your students up a huge amount. It's really powerful, and a lot easier than you think it is.
I think that's a great example because a lot of the training or instructional videos that are on YouTube and other places do seem to kind of highlight how these technologies are good for the younger crowd. And some of the examples were a little bit more, geared towards preschool or really early education students. But you guys are showing that it really does still apply across the board. And there's really kind of unique and fun things you can do no matter the age. So if anybody opens a how-to video and it looks like it's, made for a teacher of preschoolers, keep in mind that you can apply it in other ways to engage your students. Did you have anything to add on that, Gabby, for what you'd say to a colleague who was a little hesitant?
Yeah, one of the biggest things for me was I was afraid that sort of by stumbling through the technology aspect and like pulling up the screen and having it not work, that my kiddos were just going to check out. But I found that like it's a learning experience for them too, to be like, oh, this is so frustrating, like this isn't working, let's try something different, and sort of modeling that language instead of just like fumbling with your keyboard, sort of talking through it. And now my students, if I do it, they'll say like, oops, try again, like they're prompting me to make those changes, which again, I really think it's just a trial and error type thing. It, like Dana said, it's easier than you think. You just kind of have to dive head in and hope for the best.
Awesome. Well, in the effort to keep our panel short and sweet, we can wrap it up. Is there anything else you guys wanted to share about your experiences with remote learning in general, or, these virtual backgrounds and green screening tips? Anything that you wanted to add before we close?
I think just be willing to be a little ridiculous. It goes a long way with our students. I feel very silly sitting in my dining room dressed up like Harry Potter once a week, but the kids, they love it, and it gives them a chance to, and just a little bit of seriousness.
I love it too.
I agree. I think it means a lot to the students. Maybe if they're not making the connection to the academic aspects that you're trying to promote, they're still seeing your face and seeing you have fun, and they're engaged in getting language and modeling and all those things. So I think even if you don't feel like your lesson's gone well, it definitely means more to the kiddos than I think we even realize, which is really nice.
Awesome. And I'm sure it is very impactful on the families as well. Well, thank you both for taking the time out of your busy days to chat with your colleagues on this panel about virtual backgrounds through Zoom and green screening. When I send out this video, I'm going to include links to some of the instructional how-to sort of videos and websites so that anybody who wants to dive in and try it can go for it. So thank you both for taking the time, and look forward to seeing you again. Bye.